Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now, I have had the pleasure of owning and wearing a Rolex Explorer, and this is the model 124270 for over 3 years now. And for reasons which will become obvious at the end of this video, I thought it was time I did a long-term review on the Explorer after having had it for 3 years, give you my thoughts, my views, my opinions as to what it's like to own this watch, what it's like to live with it, wear it, use it on a daily basis. Now, as we all know, the Rolex Explorer has been around since 1953. And when it came into the range, it has, from that moment on, been associated with minimalism. It's quite a simple, plain, time-only watch. Its functionality is something which, nobody can argue with. It does exactly what you imagine a watch would do. And it has something of a timeless elegance to it, which I think is attractive to many men in a time where perhaps, we do not like ostentatiousness in our lives. Things are getting bigger, more brash, more bold, but the Explorer has remained very simple, very shapely, very elegant. And we can't say that we see that all that often in watches in general, but specifically from the Rolex brand. They tend to like big, large, flashy watches, and let's be honest, watches are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. My Explorer is the 36mm version, which is of course the original size which it first came out with. So let us talk about its design and its construction. And what I'm going to do, I am just going to put my phone on here, and I'm going to talk us through what the old watch looks like. So here it is. Here is my little Explorer. And as you can see, as I said, it is a time-only watch. There's not much going on here. It's 3 hands and the dial, nothing more, not a date, nothing else. And it's a 36mm watch. Of course, now the watch is also available in 40mm, should you prefer something a little larger. But I think the classic original 36mm size is still the perfect size for a gentleman. Many would disagree. It actually wears a little bit smaller than 36mm, I would say. I think that's mostly to do with the bracelet. The bracelet tapers quite markedly from the 19mm at the lug at the top where it meets the watch. I think it goes down to something like 15 at the clasp itself. So you see quite a bit of taper. The dial, simple dial. You have an inverted triangle at the 12 o'clock, baton markers, and then at 3, 6 and 9 we have Arabic numerals. All of those markers, the batons, the triangle, are all picked out in white gold, and they are filled with luminescence. So it makes the watch very easy to read in low light or even dark conditions. Black dial makes it very easy to see as well in lighting conditions in the daytime. So screw down crown, which gives us 100 meters of water resistance. And yeah, simple watch. What you have is brushed finish, but with polished flanks and high polish bezel, as you can see. And you can see the watch really catches the night quite nice. The bracelet, it's the Rolex professional bracelet, so it's got the little clasp keeper. You can see the crown there marking that. And it has got the Easy Link function, which gives you an extra 5mm of extension when you need it. So there we go. Simple, elegant, everything you really need, and nothing that you don't. Now, famously, the Explorer has been worn by many people over the years. Ian Fleming was one of the more famous wearers of the Explorer, and it has been hypothesized as a result of that when he mentions James Bond's wristwatch within the novels, he normally just says Rolex. And it has been, and I think, there's a lot of argument to be said that the actual Bond watch is more likely to be an Explorer than a Submariner, which was portrayed in the movies by, dint of accident to a degree. So could the Explorer actually be the Bond watch? I think it's likely. And just to sort of underpin its adventurous credentials, it was also worn quite a lot by Sir David Attenborough, the naturalist, famous throughout the world for his exploration of the natural world. And it was an Explorer which sat on his wrist the majority of the time. Okay, so let me tell you about my journey with the Explorer. I bought my Explorer a little over 3 years ago, and actually for me, it was the 5th Rolex watch which I owned. It came into my collection. Prior to this watch, I'd owned a Datejust, I owned a Pepsi GMT Master 2, a Root Beer GMT Master 2, a Submariner, and then this chap came in 2021, just after it was released. And I was really attracted to this watch initially, more than anything, because of its size. Right? I am a man of medium proportions, 6.5-inch wrist, so I wanted a watch which wasn't gigantic, wasn't huge, would sit on my wrist simply without sort of dominating, my sort of overall appearance. Something that would slide under the cuff of a shirt, no trouble at all. And to be fair, the Explorer did that. I think I waited about 9 months for the Explorer to become available, and then I was offered it, bought it at retail price, and I have to admit, from that point on, it has been an interesting journey. Initially, it struggled to get wrist time because, as I said, in my Rolex stable, in my collection, there were quite a few other watches which had much larger and charismatic personalities. A Pepsi, a Root Beer, a Submariner, even a bright blue dial Datejust. You can imagine the Explorer, it doesn't bring much to the party when it's up against watches like that. And almost a month before I got my Explorer, I'd been able to purchase a Pepsi from my authorised dealer at retail price. I was delighted. So, as you can imagine, just bringing in one of the most colourful and charismatic watches from the Rolex catalogue into my collection, a month later the Explorer arrives in one of those typical things, you wait for years and then two arrive at once. And I have to admit, I wore it for a week or so, and then it went in the safe. And I didn't wear it. And I didn't wear it for about 6 months. And then I felt really guilty. I tried to give it to my wife. She wears a Rolex 31mm watch. And I said, look, darling, this is more akin to your sort of, this, you could easily wear this. Try it. She wore it for a while. She didn't love it. She gave it back to me. She said, I'm not wearing it. I'm wearing my usual watch. I don't think there were enough diamonds on it for her. So she gave it back to me. It went in the safe. I did wear it over the last 3 years. I tended to wear it in the summer months, and I tended to wear it as a field watch. I think for what you could say its place is within the Rolex range right now. It is clearly the field watch in the Rolex range. And I used to wear it up here in the woods. I wear it when I'm camping. I would wear it definitely when I wanted to go somewhere, where I could wear a watch which didn't draw attention to itself. So if I was going to London, for instance, and I didn't want to wear a flashy watch which I knew would attract the attention of criminals, that's when the Explorer came into play. Only last week, in fact, I was in London for a few days, and this was the watch which I wore. Because I knew from across the street, even from across the room, it just looks like a Seiko, an Orient, or any number of other watches. Nobody is likely to rob you in a back alley for a watch which looks like any number of other modest watches. So it feels a lot safer, even though it's quite elegant. What I do like about this watch is the fact that it is streamlined and it is simple, right? Which is actually the way I like to lead my life. I like the fact there's no complications on it. I mean, I will admit, sometimes I do glance down to look for a date because my other watches that I've mentioned obviously have a date function. And I will glance down and, there's no date. You forget that you're wearing a time-only watch. But actually, there's a lot to be said for that. Simple and elegance means streamlined and cut it right back to the minimum. So I have really appreciated that element from the watch. It excels beyond any measure when it comes for that simple, elegant thing. However, as the years have rolled on, I find myself wearing this watch somewhat less and less because other more sort of dominant watches in my range attract me. When I open the safe door and they're all staring at me, I rarely reach for the Explorer. And for that reason, it's really been struggling a bit in my collection to see a lot of wrist time. But I have got some pros and cons, which over more than maybe 3.5 years of owning this watch, I can tell you now. So on the pro side, what I think is a positive about this watch, it is stealthy, all right? It is stealth wealth, if you want to say that. It's an expensive watch, but it's not ostentatious. Nobody will know that it is an expensive Rolex on your wrist. So if that's what you're going for, that's great. Of course, there's a negative to that. If you've piled a load of money into this watch and you want something to flash off, the Explorer isn't going to give you that, but it is definitely stealthy. It is simple as well. You know, it's not too difficult to read. There's not complications on the dial to draw your eye. It's not like, say, a Daytona, for instance, where it's got dials and all sorts of things going on. You've got to stare at the watch for a while to work out what the time is. With this little fella, you know exactly, straight away, at a glance, in any light conditions, exactly what's going on. It is simple. It is also small, all right? 36 millimeters in the modern world is actually trending towards somewhat smaller for a wristwatch. I think this is why Rolex brought this out last year as a 40 millimeter variant as well. So you can have 36 or 40. I think most modern men would probably aim for the 40, but me, with a modest sized wrist, who likes a more elegant sized watch, maybe more akin to the vintage era of men's style, where 34 to 36 would have been typical for a man's watch, I think it works well. So for me, that size is a pro. For others, it may be a con, but for me, it's a pro. And finally, it's elegant and timeless. If you look at old iterations of the Explorer, it looks more or less exactly the same. They vary the positioning of the sort of text on the dial a little bit, and they might sort of vary the Arabic numerals by filling them with lume or not filling them with lume over the years. But essentially, this watch has hardly changed at all in its journey. So if you like that sort of thing, timelessness, this watch has got it all over. There are cons though, there are negatives. And I've said it already, one of them is you might find it too small. I have a 36 millimeter Datejust, and that feels larger than this because of its fluted bezel, and perhaps the bracelet is somewhat different on a Datejust. It isn't that 19 millimeters at the lugs and then tapering off quite markedly, which does give it a more feminine feel. So that might be something you don't like. Its con is, it's just simply very, very practical and pared down to the minimum elements of a wristwatch. So if that's not for you, if you want a date, if you want something more, going on your watch, you might find this a little bereft of that functionality. And finally, it's expensive. It's really expensive. This is a stainless steel, time-only watch with practically no precious metals. So a little bit, the hands and the hour markers are made of yellow gold, probably nothing more than a blim of this stuff. But this watch, £6,300. Now, when I bought mine in 2021, it was $5,150. It's now $6,300, so it's gone up a lot in the last sort of 3 years. So quite expensive for a simple stainless steel piece. So what's my assessment then? Sort of rounding it up. Well, basically, I love the Explorer for all of the reasons that I just said. It's simple, it's elegant, it's the watch that you can own and wear with everything. So whether you're somebody who goes out into the woods, you wear it as a field watch. If you wear a three-piece suit every day in the city, you can wear it with as your staple sort of timekeeper. If you are a guy who goes skateboarding or you go on the beach and you just wear trunks, this watch has kind of got it all covered, because there's nothing here that you can argue with when it comes to style. Such is its minimalist simplicity. It goes with everything. And if I could be so bold as to say, this could be a one-watch collection. You could buy this watch and it's going to do everything for you. It is a professional range Rolex watch. It's a sports watch. So you can wear it for everything. Go in the water every day with it. You can do whatever you need, and this watch has got you covered. You need not have a dive watch, have a dress watch. This watch will do it all for you. So that said, you might be surprised to learn that this watch is leaving my collection, because I have decided to expand my horizons, and I want to buy a watch from a different brand with a totally different aesthetic. And in order to do that, I need to release some funds. So I looked at my collection of watches, as I say, 5 Rolexes, and it's obvious, isn't it, that I get rid of the one which I wear the least, and it is actually my Explorer. I find myself more than anything wearing my GMT Masters as my more practical daily watch. So unfortunately, even though I love the watch and I would recommend it to anyone as a potential first Rolex or an end Rolex, whatever you need, for me, it's moving on, it's going back out into the wider world. And this watch, which I've I've not worn very hard at all will be gracing somebody else's wrist very soon. I've already done the deal. I've actually got my money back on the watch, so even after owning it for 3 years, I'm not out of pocket at all, so the experience has been an entirely positive one for me. So that's another sort of pro for the Rolex. You can own it, have a good time with it over a number of years, and when you're ready to move on, you can sell it on, and actually you've lost no money at all. It's and in some cases, if you really wanted to, you can make money on them. But for me, I wasn't into that. I've got back more or less exactly what I paid for it. It's going off into the wider world, but it has been a wonderful experience. So as somebody who has no skin in the Explorer game anymore, I owned it. It's not mine anymore. It's going off into the world. I can honestly say it's been one of the best watches that I have owned. And who knows, it might come back to me in the years again, in the future. I might want to buy it again. But now I'm ready to go off into other horological adventures. I'm waving goodbye to the Explorer. It's been a great adventure. I'm grateful to it for its time with me, but now off it goes. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to support the channel, you can leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about the Explorer. Am I doing the right thing by letting it go? Or should I have hung on to it and sold something else? Drop it into the comments or even send me an email. If you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. You can even become a patron. And in my patron section, they get extra videos and an extra dialogue with me on a personal basis pretty much all the time. And if you'd like to get in on that, you'll find the links in the show notes below. So until the next time, say goodbye to the Explorer, and I will see you again very soon.